Josh Portner, the former chairman of the Bicycle Wheel Technical Committee, dropped an absolute bombshell recently when he issued a powerful rebuttal of the case for hookless road rims, one of cycling's most controversial topics in recent years. Specifically, Portner claims hookless rims are a scam. Now, for those who don't know, Josh Portner is the CEO of Silca, a former technical director at Zip and a consultant to a number of professional cycling teams, and he made these comments in a recent episode of his Marginal Gains cycling podcast, which we've linked down below if you want to check out the full episode for yourself. In answering a question from a listener, Portner, who served as chairman of the Bicycle Wheel Technical Committee from August 2012 to September 2013, goes into detail explaining why he believes hookless rims are inappropriate for road bikes, how they have zero performance advantages, and why they present a safety risk with too little margin for error. And while he acknowledges that certain wheel manufacturers will strongly disagree with his assessments, he also claims that the only purpose of hookless rims is to drive down manufacturing cost. Alright, let's take a bit of a breath and back up a bit. What are hookless rims and why are they controversial? Well, hookless rims, meaning bicycle rims without the traditional bead hooks that help retain a clincher tyre on a rim under pressure, first started appearing on road wheel sets in the late 2010s, but really rose to prominence in 2020 when major brands began jumping on the trend. Now, brands that have adopted hookless rims generally cite reduced manufacturing complexity and improved performance as reasons behind the switch, but not everyone is convinced. DT Swiss, for example, has stuck with hooked rims pretty doggedly, which they say gives the safest and widest choice of tyres for their riders. Now, for more information on this topic, check out our Hookless Rims Explainer on BikeRadar.com, which covers everything that you need to know about tyre compatibility, the relevant international standards, and how brands design and test hookless rims. Again, we've put a link to that in the video description below. The conversation starts with the podcast's co-host Michael Hottie Hotten putting a question to Portner from a listener called Mike Thompson about the so-called Hookless Dilemma, and specifically what Portner thinks would be the best tyre setup for a new set of wheels that Thompson had recently ordered. As the Hunt sub 50 limitless wheel set in question has hookless rims, Thompson wants to know whether they can continue using their preferred tyre setup, which is a 28C rear tyre and a 25C front. Now, Thompson cites wanting to stick to Portner's famous rule of 105, which says that the rim must be at least 105% of the width of the tyre to recapture the airflow as efficiently as possible, and he says that he has been using Silca's online calculator to determine his optimal tyre pressures. According to Thompson, Silca's calculator recommends pressures of 76 psi or 5.2 bar up front with 70 psi or 4.8 bar at the rear. And as the recommended front pressure is above the 72.5 psi or 5 bar limit for hookless rims, as mandated by the ETRTO, European Tyre and Rim Technical Organisation, Thompson asks whether the potential aerodynamic benefit of such rims would offset any performance losses from needing to run potentially lower than ideal tyre pressure up front. Before we get into Portner's answers, it is worth making clear that while he did respond with answers relating to that wheel set, his general points around hookless rims were aimed at hookless rims in general, not specifically Hunt's sub 50 wheel set. Alright, so in response, Portner says that Thompson is not going to like this answer, but there's no aero benefit to hookless rims. The idea that hookless rims may be more aerodynamic than ones with a tyre bead hook, Portner says has been postulated and theorised by brands making hookless rims, but is just not true. In the real world, he says, we've never once seen it to be true in an actual wind tunnel doing actual testing. Far from there being any potential benefits, Portner says there's actually more likely to be a detrimental effect to aero performance because hookless rims tend to make tyres inflate a little bit wider than they otherwise would, making it not possible to meet the rule of 105 in almost all instances. Now, as we'll come to shortly, there are of course brands who dispute this claim, but there's a more important point here about tyre compatibility that needs addressing first. Aside from questions about performance, Portner also points out that Thompson's proposed setup falls outside of the ETRTO recommendations in another critical way. With a 23mm internal rim width, the Hunt Sub 50 limitless wheels have a minimum tyre width of 28mm, according to the ETRTO and indeed Hunt themselves. Using a 25C tyre on those wheels would therefore be a really dangerous thing to do, says Portner, and notably, this is something that Hunt agrees with. Per its website, Hunt says that the Sub 50 limitless rims are ETRTO compliant for use with 28C tyres and wider, and it also confirmed to us directly that 25C tyres are not compatible with these rims. According to Portner, ignoring this limitation can increase the likelihood of suffering a tyre blow-off dramatically, and he claims to have seen tyres like that blow off on hookless rims as low as 78 to 80 psi. Although moving up to a 28mm wide front tyre would solve Thompson's pressure and safety issues, Portner says that it might still come at the cost of some performance. According to Portner, those 28s are going to measure 30mm wide, and so you can't meet the rule of 105. Hunt disputes this specific claim though, because the Sub 50 limitless front wheel has an external rim width of 34.2mm, which is 14% wider than 30mm, and the wheelset is also claimed to be optimised specifically for 28 and 30mm wide tyres. In general though, Portner says that the problem with hookless rims for road is that your tyre always ends up being bigger than it should be, but it can't get any smaller for safety reasons, and so you're giving up aero properties. Despite this, Portner does say that the Hunt wheelset is a good, solid, aerodynamically competent wheelset with the 28mm tyres, even if he thinks there are potentially faster setups. When we asked Hunt about Portner's comments, it told us that simply focusing on a tyre and rim's frontal area ignores other critical factors such as aerodynamic performance at higher yaw angles and factors such as grip, comfort and rolling resistance. Now Hunt didn't put a figure on it, but it did also say that it believes there is a marginal aerodynamic benefit to hookless rims, but it's mainly only seen at higher yaw angles where the interaction between the tyre and the rim becomes more critical. Likewise, Hunt said that while it agrees narrow tyres may be more aerodynamic in a wind tunnel, it also said that it designs its rims taking into account the tyre sizes that riders actually intend to use. And it noted that 28C is by far the most popular tyre size that it sells with its wheels, with 30C already overtaking 25s in terms of sales volume. Delving further into the subject, Hottie then asked whether hookless rims can ever achieve the optimal balance of aerodynamics and tyre pressures, to which Portner responds, not for road. Portner concedes that hookless rims are totally fine for gravel and mountain bikes where tyres are much wider and pressures generally far lower, but he says that he believes hookless rims for road bikes will always be constrained by that need to run wider tyres or lower pressures than may be optimal. Then, Portner says, "It's a strong word, I think it's a scam. It's way less safe than it needs to be, and it has absolutely zero performance advantage in any area of performance, and actually it likely has some performance detriment somewhere or another." Furthermore, he says that he believes manufacturers came up with hookless because it saves them money when they make the rims, whilst also bemoaning the idea that some brands are selling wheel sets with hookless rims that are every bit as expensive as the hooked rims they replace. Now, the fact that hookless rims can be cheaper to produce is something that Zipp, which has been one of the most prominent brands backing hookless technology in recent years, has previously acknowledged. However, it also says that this isn't the only factor driving its decision to produce hookless rims, and it cites other benefits such as lower weight, higher impact resistance, and tighter tolerances. Zipp has also passed some of these savings onto riders in the form of lower prices, at least initially. When Zipp launched its first hookless 303 Firecrest wheelset in 2020, for example, it cost £700 or $600 less than the previous iteration with hooked rims. At this point, Portner says he envisages that he'll have a load of manufacturers in his email inbox really pissed off about his comment, but he says, "I continue to not be a fan." Whew, alright, are you still with me? Summing up his arguments, Portner criticises what he sees as a lack of margin for error with hookless rims, saying that they are unlike any other historical cycling product in this regard. In our lab, on highly calibrated equipment, Portner says, we've seen tyres that are approved to work with hookless rims blow off as low as 78 psi. It's just such a safety risk for no other benefit. Notably, this is a sentiment previously echoed by Dan Bigham, the head of engineering at Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe and a prominent voice in the current debate about safety in the pro peloton. Now, we've had Dan on the channel before to talk about that and loads of other interesting stuff, so if you want to check out our conversation with him, we've put a little link down below. On the subject of hookless rims, Bigham made his comments in the wake of Thomas De Gent's infamous crash at the UAE Tour in February 2024, which occurred while he was using 28C Vittoria Corsa Pro tyres on Zip hookless rims. Bigham posted on X saying that history will not be kind to road hookless and he doesn't consider factors of safety as low as 1.1 as fine. Following that incident, the UCI, cycling's much loved international governing body, also launched an investigation into hookless rims and related incidents, and then, less than a month later, issued a directive reminding teams of the requirement to comply with the latest ISO standards and said that it would carry out an in-depth analysis of its regulations surrounding this topic to help guarantee the safety of riders. Although Vittoria claimed that the incident was unrelated to the fact that De Gent was using hookless rims, it did start producing 29C tyres later that year to help its sponsored professional teams comply with those ISO and ETRTO recommendations for 25mm wide rims, which have a minimum tyre size of 29mm. And we actually spotted these 29C tyres on Jonas Vingegaard's Cervelo R5 at the 2024 Tour de France first, with an official launch of these wide rim optimised tyres not coming until earlier this year. Now these tyres, Vittoria says, offer a perfect cohesive profile which minimises microturbulence and therefore improves aerodynamic performance. So in other words, they attempt to address the problem that Portner notes about tyres always being wider than is optimal on hookless rims. It's not clear whether Portner is aware of these 29C Vittoria tyres or similar examples such as Continental's recently launched Archetype, which is a 30C tyre said to be optimised for the Envy hookless rims that UAE Team Emirates uses. However, it is notable that Tadej Pogačar has been using Envy's new SES 4.5 Pro wheelset at this year's Tour de France, which uses rims with a narrower internal width and mini hooks. Jonas Vingegaard's Visma Lease bike team is also using reserve wheels, which feature a similar semi-hook design. Now, whether these are isolated examples or a signal of a wider trend back towards hooked rims remain to be seen, but it seems that road cycling's hookless dilemma is far from settled. Well, there you have it. If you have made it this far, a massive thanks for watching, and don't forget to leave a comment below telling us what you think. And if you like this video, why not check out this one showcasing all of the weird and wonderful tech that we saw at this year's Tour de France.